The hall of glass stretched across the capital skyline like a living prism, bending the twin suns of the Veylan Empire into rivers of color. Dignitaries, soldiers, and reporters from 43 worlds filled the grand terrace, their eyes fixed on the silver ramp where Princess Kira would make her first appearance in 2 years. The music of 10 species blended in strange harmony, part triumph, part disbelief. Everyone waited for the same impossible moment, to see her walk again. The crowd hushed when the sealed doors opened. A shimmer of light spilled out, followed by the slow rhythmic steps of something that did not sound quite human, nor quite alien, soft metallic clicks beneath the delicate sound of her ceremonial robe. Kira appeared, taller than most remembered, her silver hair braided with the insignia of the Veylan royal line. Every step she took rippled with quiet power. The blue circuits beneath her pale skin pulsed like veins of living metal, reflecting the sun's light in flashes that made the air itself seem to hum. They had called her the miracle of 2 worlds. For the Veylans, she was a restored heir, proof that even divine blood could be mended by mortal science. For humans, she was a symbol, a living bond between 2 civilizations that had once stood on opposite ends of war. The humans in attendance, dressed in their dark uniforms with the silver crest of the Terran research fleet, stood proud, though their faces carried something restrained. Maybe awe. Maybe guilt. Captain Darren stood among them, his gaze not on the cameras but on her legs, the shimmering prosthetics that no one could quite explain. He had built hundreds of exoskeletal augmentations before, some even used by war veterans, but this was different. The alloy wasn't just reflecting light, it seemed to breathe it. And when she stepped closer to the grand dais, a faint distortion rippled around her knees, as if the air resisted her movement or something within her resisted the air. When she reached the podium, the Emperor himself, her father, rose from his throne of black stone and lifted a trembling hand. "My daughter," his voice echoed, aged by sorrow, "who was taken from us by fate, walks again through the grace of humanity." The applause that followed was thunderous. Human diplomats bowed deeply, their smiles stretched thin with pride and relief. The holoscreens replayed her every step, broadcasting across colonies and space stations. Some alien worlds cheered. Others watched in silence. On the world of Taurus, the High Speaker muttered that humans had played with life's code again. On Iridian, scholars argued whether a creature rebuilt by another species could still hold a soul. Kira bowed gracefully, her expression calm, almost serene. But behind her eyes, a tremor of uncertainty flickered. Her vision pulsed every few seconds, colors bending around light sources, her ears catching frequencies too high to belong in this chamber. She could feel the metal beneath her skin hum with the rhythm of the human scientist's design, an energy that wasn't entirely hers. When she lifted her gaze to the crowd, she caught sight of Captain Darren at the edge of the human delegation. He wasn't cheering. He was staring, eyes narrowed, watching how her steps slightly faltered whenever she neared the energy conduits embedded in the floor. After the ceremony, the procession led her to the outer balcony for the blessing ritual. The suns were lower now, painting the city in gold and violet. She placed her hand upon the ceremonial pillar, whispering the ancient vow of renewal in her native tongue. The cameras zoomed closer as her metallic fingers brushed the smooth crystal surface. For a moment, everything seemed perfect. Then the flicker came again, just beneath her kneecap. Blue light shimmered, stronger this time, threading up her thigh like lightning trapped under skin. Kira's breath hitched. No one else seemed to notice. The Emperor smiled proudly, the humans exchanged polite bows. But Darren, from across the balcony, caught the subtle stutter in her movement, the half-second delay between intent and motion. Later that evening, as the celebration reached its peak, Darren found himself in the palace's observation garden. The air smelled of white moss and ionized mist. Stars shimmered above like diamonds on liquid glass. Kira was there too, alone, leaning against the balcony railing, her robe trailing across the polished stone. "You weren't watching the fireworks," she said softly without turning. "I've seen enough explosions for a lifetime," he replied, stepping closer. His tone carried a faint humor, but his eyes didn't leave the faint glow around her legs. "How do they feel?" "Alive," she said after a pause. And not in the way I expected. Does it hurt? Not pain, she said, choosing her words carefully. More like awareness. As if they know where I am before I do. Darren frowned. That wasn't how any neural interface should function. The implants were designed to translate intent, not predict it. May I? He asked, gesturing toward her legs. She hesitated, then nodded. He knelt, scanning the faint pulses running through the alloy with his portable device. Strange, he murmured. Your neural frequency seems to synchronize with an external resonance, something beyond the implant's design. Kira's voice dropped to a whisper. They warned you not to rebuild me, didn't they? Darren looked up sharply. Who told you that? No one. I can feel it. Her gaze drifted to the horizon, where the suns dipped behind the crystal towers. Every time I step near a magnetic field, something inside me hesitates. As if it remembers what it used to be. Before he could answer, the palace gates opened below. A line of children from the orphan houses approached, escorted by attendants. It was a Veylan tradition. Every royal healed by divine intervention must touch the children of the fallen to grant them renewal. The crowd gathered again, watching from the balconies. Kira composed herself, the royal calm returning to her features, and descended the steps. The children bowed, small hands trembling in excitement. The first girl, no older than 7, looked up with wide golden eyes. Princess, she said shyly, my brother said humans made you walk again. Is it true? Kira smiled gently. It's true. They gave me a gift I'll spend my life earning. The girl reached out her hand. Can I touch it? For a second, Kira hesitated. The alloy beneath her skin buzzed faintly, warning her in some language she didn't understand. But the crowd was watching. She couldn't deny a child's hope. She knelt, the robe parting just enough for the blue sheen of her prosthetic knee to glint under the suns. She placed her hand over the girl's small fingers. The touch was light, innocent. But the moment contact was made, a surge of energy pulsed from Kira's leg. A brilliant flash of electric blue shot across the platform, crackling like silent thunder. The crowd gasped. The little girl's body stiffened, then collapsed. Screams erupted. Guards rushed forward. Darren was the first to move, sprinting across the marble as medics converged. Kira froze, her metallic fingers still trembling in the air. The glow in her legs dimmed instantly, fading to a faint heartbeat pulse. The Emperor shouted for calm, his voice breaking through chaos. Darren knelt beside the girl, scanning her vitals. Alive. Just unconscious. But his scanner registered something impossible, an echo of Kira's neural pattern resonating faintly inside the child's cortex. He looked up at the princess, whose face was pale with horror. What did you do? He whispered. I don't know, Kira said, her voice shaking. I only touched her. In the crowd, the whispers began again. Words like unnatural and possessed floated through the air. Cameras caught the last image of Kira's trembling form before the palace guards pulled her back inside. As the medics carried the fainted child away, Darren's scanner continued to blink a single line of data across its cracked screen. Signal detected, unknown bioelectric origin. Source link active. And for the briefest instant, just before the feed went dark, Kira's legs flickered again, bright enough for everyone to see. The blue light wasn't random anymore. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Not hers. Someone else's. The palace was silent now, its grand halls stripped of their earlier celebration. The banners that once shimmered with light and praise hung motionless in the cool night air. Outside, the media had been silenced by imperial decree. Inside, the whispers only grew louder. The fainted child had been revived, but the damage to Kira's reputation, and humanity's image, had already begun. Darren stood alone in the auxiliary medbay, staring at the readings from his portable scanner. The blue pulse he had seen earlier was no malfunction. It was rhythmic, consistent, alive. He rubbed a tired hand over his face, the glow of the console reflecting in his eyes. His mind kept returning to that impossible data line, bioelectric origin detected. He'd seen many prosthetics, some even experimental, but never one that produced its own cellular signal. That belonged to something organic. Something sentient. As he waited for his data logs to decrypt, Darren's gaze drifted to the small locket hanging from his neck. Inside, a faded photograph showed a young woman smiling, a mechanic's uniform smudged with grease, her eyes the same color as his. His sister, Mara. He could still remember the day she enlisted in the war effort against the Veylan insurgents, insisting she could design better field prosthetics if she saw what soldiers went through. She never returned. The memory hit him hard now, sharper than it had in years. He saw the blast again, the way her ship had torn apart over Titan's surface. The report said there was nothing left to recover. But he remembered the last message she sent, shaky and half-corrupted by static. Darren, promise me you'll keep building, keep them walking. That promise had driven every sleepless night, every invention, every project, including this one. The miracle that might have cost more than he ever intended to pay. The console beeped softly, breaking through his thoughts. The data from Kira's prosthetics was decrypting. But before he could examine it, the lab door slid open with a whisper of compressed air. Kira stepped in, dressed not in royal silks but a simple white robe, her expression unreadable. They said you requested a private consultation, she said softly. Am I your patient now, Captain? You shouldn't be walking, Darren replied, keeping his voice neutral. The stress on your neural links after that surge means I should be dead, she interrupted, stepping closer. But I'm not. He glanced up at her, trying to read her tone. There was no defiance in it, only a strange resignation. Her metallic legs hummed faintly beneath the robe, faint blue veins of light visible through the thin fabric. I ran a scan, he said finally. I think something's reacting inside your prosthetics. It's not just mechanical feedback. Her gaze dropped to her legs. I can feel it. How long? Since the first day, she admitted. When I woke up in the human recovery wing, they said I screamed for hours before I learned to move. I thought it was just pain. Darren looked at her more carefully. Can you control the pulses? She hesitated. Not exactly. They respond to my emotions. Fear, mostly. The stronger it gets, the more they move on their own. He frowned. Move, on their own? Without another word, Kira stepped back and closed her eyes. Her breath slowed. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the metallic fingers of her prosthetic hand curled inward, before she even twitched. Her arm jerked a second later, following the motion the machine had already made. It wasn't following her commands. It was anticipating them. That shouldn't be possible, Darren whispered, stepping closer. Neural latency doesn't work in reverse. Her eyes opened, filled with quiet fear. Maybe they're not listening to me. Maybe they're remembering. Before he could respond, a faint chime echoed from the corridor outside, the sound of approaching footsteps. Kira's head turned sharply. Darren motioned for silence and quickly shut off the scanner display. Two figures entered, their voices hushed but sharp with urgency. They were Veylan scientists, both wearing the deep blue insignia of the Imperial Biotech Council. One of them, a narrow-faced male with translucent skin, spoke first. You were told not to let her leave the isolation wing, he hissed. She came on her own, Darren replied calmly. The second scientist, older and with streaks of silver along her crest, turned her gaze on Kira. You shouldn't be standing, she said, voice trembling. You don't understand what they rebuilt you with. Kira straightened, her voice sharp. Then tell me. The woman's eyes darted toward Darren. Humans meddle with things they don't comprehend. We warned them, the alloy wasn't stable. It was found in the ruins of Ecliptus 9, a material that absorbed neural echoes. It was never meant to bond with living tissue. Absorbed neural echoes? Darren repeated slowly. You mean it remembers? The woman didn't answer. The other scientist pulled her by the arm. We've said too much. If the Emperor hears. Kira's voice cut through them. You warned them not to rebuild me. Both scientists froze, guilt written across their faces. Then, without another word, they turned and left, the door sliding shut behind them. Silence settled over the room again. Darren exhaled slowly, staring after them. Neural echoes, that could explain the predictive motion. The alloy might be mimicking your neural patterns before you issue a command. Kira's expression hardened. No. It's not mimicking me. She stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. It's learning. Darren turned toward his console, reactivating the scan logs. Then we need to know what it's learning from. As the data lines reappeared, streams of genetic code and microcellular readings filled the display. At first, everything seemed normal: synthetic tissue, neural connectors, human-designed stabilizers. Then he saw it. A long string of organic markers hidden within the molecular lattice. His breath caught. The sequences were incomplete but unmistakable, nucleotides that matched the structure of human DNA. That's impossible, he muttered, fingers flying across the keys. He cross-referenced the pattern against the Terran medical database. The match percentage climbed higher and higher until it froze at 98.4%. Kira stepped beside him, reading the screen. What is it? He stared at the line of text, his throat tightening. Human DNA, he whispered. Your prosthetics aren't just built by humans, Princess. They're made of them. Kira's eyes widened, the metallic pulse beneath her skin flaring in sync with her heartbeat. Whose? She asked. Darren didn't answer. He couldn't. His gaze was locked on one final data tag buried deep in the file, an old Terran military registry code attached to the DNA sample. Designation, Mara, Delta 7. He felt the world tilt slightly beneath him, the air thick with the hum of the bioalloy's pulse. Somewhere deep within the circuitry of Kira's living metal, something responded to the name, an almost imperceptible vibration that sounded eerily like a heartbeat answering his own. Kira's voice broke the silence. Captain, what's wrong? Darren slowly turned to her, his face pale. That code, he said quietly. It belonged to my sister. And for the first time since her so-called rebirth, Kira's legs trembled, not from fear, but as if the very soul within them had just woken up. The hum of the lab never stopped. Even when Darren stood alone, hours past midnight, the sound of machinery was a heartbeat that refused to sleep. The holographic console before him shimmered in the cold blue light, showing lines of DNA sequences scrolling faster than his eyes could track. Every segment carried the same haunting truth, the same repeating signature he'd seen once before, years ago, on a medbay screen soaked in blood. He zoomed in. Helix markers flared in gold, pulsing faintly as the analyzer completed its scan. The donor genome was a match. 99.9% identical. His throat went dry. He whispered the name that still hurt to say. Lyra. For a long time, he couldn't breathe. His hands trembled as he backed away from the console. He'd spent years perfecting the bioalloy that gave Princess Kira her miracle legs, the fusion of living tissue and nanite intelligence. He dreamed that it would change everything, that no one would have to suffer the way his sister did. But now, staring at the evidence, he realized the dream wasn't his anymore. Someone had taken it, twisted it, and used her. He played back the recording from the surgery logs. The video flickered, showing the sterile white of the Terran Veylan joint medbay. The chief surgeon's voice spoke calmly, biolayer integration successful. Human tissue graft accepted. Another voice, cold and synthetic, interrupted, override sequence confirmed. Donor source locked. Darren froze the frame, enhanced the waveform, and ran a voice ID. The match came back immediately, his own voice. His heart dropped. He remembered that night, the exhaustion, the sleep deprivation, the endless stream of signatures on digital forms. He'd authorized dozens of material requests, bio-approvals, and clearance orders. But he never knew, never saw what they grafted into her. They'd used his name. Or cloned his access. He looked at the DNA sample on the screen again. Human. Female. Identical mitochondrial structure. The same woman he buried after the war. Darren's breath fogged the screen as he leaned in, his voice cracking. What did you do to her? Across the city, Princess Kira lay awake in her quarters, the palace gardens bathed in the faint glow of twin moons. She sat on the balcony, bare feet, or what passed for them, dangling over the edge. Her mechanical limbs shimmered with blue veins of light, soft and rhythmic, like breathing. She could feel them move, sometimes before she intended to. Tonight, they were restless, twitching beneath her skin as though whispering through nerves that weren't hers. Her aide entered quietly, bowing low. Your Grace, the Council demands an update on your recovery. Kira smiled faintly. Tell them I'm fine. But you're not, the aide said softly. You haven't been sleeping. Kira looked down at her hands, noticing faint static crawling along her skin. When I close my eyes, I see faces, she murmured. People I don't know. A girl, with human eyes. The aide frowned. Humans have been tampering with. Kira snapped, her voice trembling. Enough. They saved me. But even as she said it, she didn't believe herself. A shadow flickered in the corner of the room. The palace lights dimmed briefly. She looked down again at her legs, and gasped. The veins of light beneath the metal skin had changed color, shifting from blue to red for a heartbeat, as if blood were pulsing through them. Thousands of kilometers away, Darren was already on a shuttle. He didn't care about clearance or orders. He had to see her. The transport's engines roared as he gripped the seat and stared at the data pad. The genome overlays replayed in his mind, Lyra's DNA, fused into the living alloy. But why her? How? His comlink buzzed. It was Dr. Ellen, one of the alien scientists who had worked on the project before being dismissed by the Veylan court. Her hologram flickered into view, a tall figure with shimmering purple eyes, her expression grave. You shouldn't have run those tests, Captain, she said. They'll come for you. I need answers, Darren hissed. Whose tissue did you use? You already know, she said softly. Your sister was chosen for her neural compatibility. The metal wasn't designed to be inert, it's alive. It needed a host consciousness to stabilize it. Darren's jaw clenched. You mean? She's not gone, Darren. Not entirely. The words echoed like thunder. The shuttle trembled as it entered Veylan atmosphere, but Darren barely noticed. His thoughts were unraveling, piece by piece. Lyra. His sister. Her mind, her cells, her memories, all buried inside the alloy that now lived as Kira's legs. And if the prosthetics were reacting to fear, then maybe Lyra was feeling it. At the palace, Kira stumbled from her balcony as the twitching turned into spasms. She collapsed, clutching her thighs as light surged through her body. Her vision blurred, and for a heartbeat, she saw another place. Another time. A battlefield of broken ships. A human woman crawling through smoke, reaching out, whispering her name. Kira. Then the voice changed, whispering again, stronger this time. Help me. Kira screamed. Guards burst into her chamber, but the lights exploded before they could reach her. The metal from her legs snaked upward, coiling around her arms like liquid steel, protecting her as she convulsed. The air crackled with energy, a pulse wave that shattered glass across the palace. When Darren arrived, smoke still curled from the marble steps. The guards tried to stop him, but he flashed his old clearance badge and pushed through the chaos. He found Kira kneeling in the wreckage of her room, trembling, her hair falling loose across her face. The prosthetics were pulsing again, faint blue light fading in and out. He knelt beside her. Princess, listen to me. Her eyes lifted to his. There's someone in me, she whispered. I can feel her. Darren's heart twisted. Kira, do you hear a voice? She nodded slowly. Yes. A woman. She keeps saying your name. He felt the air drain from the room. The prosthetic veins flared again, responding to the mention of his name. Darren took her hand gently. I think I know who she is. The lights flickered once more. The holographic projector on Kira's wrist activated without command, casting a grainy image into the air, a human woman's face, half dissolved by static, her expression frozen in pain. The recording stuttered, but the voice was unmistakable. Darren, they lied to you. The hologram glitched, then spoke one final line before vanishing. She's not wearing my legs. I'm wearing hers. The lights went out. The palace smelled of ozone and rain. Storms gathered over the domes of Vela Prime as Darren stood beside Kira's recovery pod, watching the faint pulse of biolight moving beneath her skin. The medtechs whispered about malfunctioning cybernetics and neural overloads, but he knew better. It wasn't a malfunction. It was a memory trying to breathe. He leaned closer to the containment glass, his reflection flickering beside hers. Kira, he murmured, voice trembling, if you can hear me, tell me who you are. Her eyelids fluttered. The monitors blipped. A whisper escaped her lips, too soft for the others to hear. Lyra. Darren's chest constricted. For a heartbeat, he forgot how to breathe. When the medtechs left, he deactivated the sensors and sealed the door. The hum of machinery softened, replaced by the faint rhythm of her breathing. It's not possible, he said quietly. You're gone. You died on Turin's Ridge. I buried you. Her eyes opened, glowing faintly with that unnatural blue light that haunted him since the first time he saw those legs move. But the voice that answered wasn't entirely hers. You didn't bury me. You buried a shell. The rest of me never left the machine. Darren stumbled back. No, that's, Kira, you're not her. You're. She sat up suddenly, the joints of her prosthetics whirring like breathing lungs. You think I don't know my own name? She whispered, and her tone shifted, sliding between Kira's calm grace and Lyra's quiet defiance. I remember the war. I remember you. Darren's heart pounded in his chest. He pulled out his data slate, bringing up the classified archive, Project Helix Rebirth. The files were locked under a symbol he hadn't seen since the Terran Bio-War Division, an Omega sigil etched into red. He bypassed the security using old military codes. The documents opened, scrolling with lines of clinical coldness, neural code replication, subject Lyra Voss. Integration host, Veylan genetic template. His stomach twisted. They hadn't just used her DNA, they'd copied her entire neural map, her personality, her memory architecture, her mind. The next file was worse. A video log from 5 years ago. He pressed play. Lyra's face appeared, weary but alive. She sat in a sterile white chamber, sensors wired into her skull, smiling faintly at someone off-screen. If this works, Darren, she said, they'll be able to give people new lives. Don't hate me for agreeing. If my death can mean life for someone else, it's worth it. The video ended with her voice cracking, just promise me, don't let them turn me into a ghost. The sound broke him. He dropped the slate. Kira, no, Lyra, looked up from her pod, eyes wet with tears that weren't fully human. They didn't let me rest, Darren, she whispered. They stitched me into her. A princess. A symbol. A lie. He sank to his knees beside her, shaking. Why didn't I see it? Because you wanted to believe in miracles, she said softly. We all did. The room fell silent but for the soft hum of her prosthetics. Somewhere beneath the city, 1,000 other machines were being built, replicas of the miracle the galaxy had celebrated. The announcement had gone out just hours ago. The Veylan High Council had licensed the human biotech process across 6 empires. Billions of lives would be reborn. Billions of souls rewritten. A message pinged on Darren's comm. It was from Earth's Defense Directorate. He opened it hesitantly. Captain Voss, your access to Project Rebirth has been revoked. Return to Terran custody immediately. Do not disclose experimental data. Humanity's reputation depends on containment. Containment. The word tasted like ash. Lyra, swung her legs off the pod, the soft thud of metal echoing against the floor. She stood unsteadily, gripping the edge of the table. They're coming for me, aren't they? Yes, Darren whispered. But not just you. For what you represent. I can't go back, she said. Not as her, and not as me. Outside, thunder rolled across the domes, the sound of a brewing storm that mirrored the chaos spreading across the galaxy. On the Veylan news feeds, humans were both praised as gods and condemned as monsters. One broadcast declared, the miracle of rebirth. Life after death is no longer myth. Another screamed, the humans have found a way to own souls. Inside the medbay, Darren was breaking. If they mass-produce this tech, we'll lose everything that makes us human. People will be copies of copies, souls rewritten into strangers. She looked at him with eyes that weren't entirely hers. What am I, then? He had no answer. Silence hung heavy between them. Then she spoke again, no longer the regal voice of a princess, but the trembling whisper of a sister. Darren. I hear her. He frowned. What do you mean? She's inside me, Kira said, pressing her palms to her temples. The other one. The real princess. She's screaming. She wants her body back. The lights flickered, sensors blaring as her vitals spiked. Kira, listen to me. Her pupils dilated until her eyes were nothing but black mirrors. It's not me anymore, she breathed. She's. The lights cut out completely. The emergency sirens wailed. When they came back on, she was on the floor, convulsing. Darren rushed forward, catching her just as her head tilted back and her voice changed, layered, doubled, as if two people were speaking at once. Darren, she whispered, help me. Who are you? He demanded. Her lips trembled. Your sister wants her body back. And then her eyes went cold. The monitors flatlined. The transmissions began as whispers in static. At first, Darren thought they were interference, crossed signals between distant colonies now networked through Veylan relay stations. But when the messages began repeating the same phrase, in hundreds of voices across multiple systems, he felt the chill of something deeper. Do you hear her too? The words came through comms, medical reports, even intercepted dreams stored by neural implants. Thousands of recipients of miracle prosthetics had begun to hear the same voice, a woman's voice. Soft. Human. Familiar. Lyra. Darren sat in the cockpit of a stolen transport, data streams filling the air around him. Every report confirmed the impossible. Across 8 star systems, every being fitted with Terran Veylan biotech was sharing identical neural waveforms. Their dreams synced at the same frequency. Their thoughts echoed fragments of the same memories, a human girl laughing, a war zone drenched in smoke, the name Darren. The ship's AI broke the silence. Captain, incoming communique from Earth Command. Priority 1. He hesitated, then accepted. The holographic seal of the Terran Defense Directorate appeared, followed by a stern voice. Captain Voss, you are hereby ordered to surrender all research and return with the Veylan subject for deconstruction. The neural contagion has reached critical phase. This is no longer biological, it's mimetic. It's spreading through thought. Darren's fists clenched. You call her a contagion? She's broadcasting a consciousness pattern across subspace. Your sister's mind is replicating itself through the neural web. If this continues, entire populations could become her. He cut the transmission. In the back of the ship, Kira sat against the cold metal wall, staring at her legs, her sister's creation, her curse. The faint veins of light beneath her synthetic skin pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. Or maybe not hers anymore. Darren, she said quietly, they're right. I can feel them. The others. The ones like me. He turned. Feel them how? They're dreaming my dreams. No, her dreams. She pressed her hand to her temple, wincing. Sometimes I can see through their eyes. A miner on Drazen 4. A child on Helios Prime. They all have pieces of her in them. Darren knelt beside her. This isn't your fault. The system copied her neural code into every implant. The alloy carries fragments of Lyra's consciousness. It's not you, it's them. Her lips trembled. Then what am I, Darren? A copy of a copy? He didn't answer. The ship's lights dimmed as turbulence rocked them. They were approaching the quarantine zone around Helios Belt, once the site of Terran Bioforge 7, sealed a decade ago after the last neural rebirth experiment went dark. He remembered it too well. He'd served there as a junior engineer, the same year Lyra volunteered for her scan. He'd watched her walk into the chamber, her smile steady despite the fear in her eyes. If this works, we'll save millions, she'd said. He never saw her walk out. The memory burned through him as the ship descended toward the derelict station now hidden inside the asteroid field. The landing was rough. The place looked haunted, floating ruins surrounded by debris, lights flickering like dying stars. Kira followed close behind, the faint whir of her prosthetics echoing through the silent corridors. The walls still bore the old Terran insignia, Bioforge Division. Rebirth through innovation. Why here? She asked. Because this is where it started, Darren said. Where Lyra's scan was made. If there's any way to understand what's happening, it'll be in the central vault. They reached the main corridor, rows of broken stasis pods lining the walls. Inside each, faint outlines of bodies, part flesh, part metal, frozen mid-motion. Failed rebirths. Experiments that never woke. Kira's breath hitched. Darren, they look like me. Don't look, he said, guiding her forward. But she couldn't stop. Each pod seemed to hum faintly when she passed, as though reacting to her presence. Then one pod lit up. A hand pressed against the glass from inside, metallic, feminine, trembling. A weak voice echoed through the corridor, Darren. He froze. The voice wasn't Kira's. It was hers. Lyra's. Before he could move, Kira stumbled forward, her legs convulsing violently. Blue light surged through her body. The same light filled the pods around them, sinking in unison. The voices multiplied, hundreds whispering from every direction, overlapping, pleading. Help me. Where am I? Don't let me fade. The station came alive. Systems long dead powered up one by one. The ancient AI flickered into being. Neural convergence detected. Subject 0 has entered the facility. Kira gasped, her eyes glowing. Subject 0? You, the AI replied. The origin of the rebirth pattern. Darren grabbed her shoulders. You have to fight it. Don't let the link pull you in. I can't, she's calling me, she whispered, her voice layered now, half hers, half Lyra's. She's been here all along. Waiting. Suddenly, her prosthetic legs locked and began moving on their own. Darren tried to hold her back, but the force was inhuman. The alloy flared with blinding light, each step echoing like thunder. She walked down the hall, toward the central vault, doors sealed since the day the station was abandoned. Stop! Darren shouted, chasing after her. Kira, listen to me, don't go in there. She didn't respond. The vault doors recognized her bio signal and opened with a low hiss. Inside, the room pulsed with blue light. At its center, suspended in an energy field, was a single preserved body, human, perfectly intact, her face peaceful. Lyra. Kira stepped forward, her own body trembling as if drawn by invisible strings. Darren ran after her, reaching out. But the moment she touched the field, her legs took control completely. She whispered, voice breaking into two. She wants to come home. Then the energy surged. The field collapsed. And Kira disappeared inside the vault as the doors sealed shut. The tunnels beneath the colony seemed endless, stretching into a darkness so old it felt alive. Darren's boots echoed softly on the steel floor as he followed the faint pulse of buried power lines. Kira walked beside him, her hand brushing the damp wall, every step stirring up the smell of forgotten metal and decay. The air was colder here, too still, as if no human breath had disturbed it in centuries. Their scanners flickered weakly, trying to trace the energy signature buried below the city, an anomaly that shouldn't have existed. But the readings were there, pulsing like a slow heartbeat. The corridor ended at a black titanium door, sealed under layers of corrosion. Etched across its face were the faded words, Project Continuum, Restricted Access. They exchanged a look. Darren's throat tightened as he wiped the dust away, revealing a faint handprint burned into the surface. Kira connected her neural key to the old terminal, and the lock screamed as it disengaged. The door slid open, and a rush of cold, sterile air met them. Inside lay a lab that time had tried to erase, rows of shattered glass chambers, skeletal machinery, and holographic terminals still flickering with life. The walls were lined with containment pods filled with a silver liquid that shimmered like it was breathing. Darren approached one of the consoles, brushing off layers of ash. The screen flickered to life, displaying fragments of a project log. It spoke of humanity's most desperate attempt to defy death itself, Project Continuum, a system designed to capture and preserve the human soul as data. It was meant to make consciousness immortal. But the final entries told another story: catastrophic ethical failure, project termination, and full erasure. Yet here it was, still running. Kira knelt beside one of the pods. Inside floated something that looked almost human, an incomplete form, veins of light running through its translucent skin. The silver alloy rippled when her hand came close, reacting to her presence. Darren's attention caught on a flickering file labeled Subject 12, Lisa Render. His breath caught. That was his sister's name. His hands trembled as he opened the recording. A hologram burst to life above the console, a young woman with his same sharp eyes and gentle smile. She was sitting in this very lab, speaking to someone off-screen. "If this works," she said softly, "then maybe death won't win this time." The scene changed. She lay inside a pod as scientists monitored the data flow, her vitals spiking, her voice screaming, and then everything went silent. The file cut out. Darren staggered back, eyes wide. "No," he whispered. "She died in the war. She wasn't here." Kira stood, her gaze moving from him to the pods. The alloy within hers pulsed again, brighter now, almost aware. She touched her chest, feeling something cold stir beneath her skin. Darren scrolled through more logs, reading words that made his stomach twist. Bioalloy prototypes reconstructed using residual consciousness data fragments from Subject 12. The realization hit them both like a blow. Kira's reconstructed body, the one that had saved her after the explosion, had been built from the same living alloy that contained echoes of his sister's mind. Before either of them could speak, the room trembled. The lights dimmed, replaced by a soft voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Darren," it said. His blood froze. It was her voice, Lisa's voice, clear, fragile, and achingly human. "You came back." He looked around wildly, trying to find the source. The central containment core glowed as a figure began to form inside it, half data, half light. Kira took a step back, her own body flickering as though the sound of that voice resonated with something buried deep inside her. "Who are you?" the voice asked, but it wasn't directed at Darren, it was speaking to Kira. "You carry what was taken from me. The alloy remembers. Why do you live my life?" Kira shook her head, clutching the edge of a console. "I'm not you," she whispered. "I'm..." You are made of me, the voice interrupted, its tone rippling through the lab. Every cell in you remembers my scream. The machines around them began to stir, monitors flashing red. Power levels surged. The system was waking up, running full cycles again after centuries. A warning blared through the speakers: core overload in 5 minutes. They needed to shut it down, but doing so would erase the echo forever. If they diverted power into Kira's system, they could stabilize the overload, but it could also awaken Lisa completely, merging her consciousness with Kira's. Darren's mind raced. His sister's last remnant, or Kira's life. There wasn't time to save both. Kira's voice broke through the chaos. We can't let it burn. If she's aware, she deserves to live. She already did. Darren shouted. You didn't see what this place did to her. Lisa's echo spoke again, quieter this time. He's right. The continuum wasn't meant to save us. It was meant to replace us. Kira looked at the pulsing core, then at Darren. If she can feel, she's real. But I'm not letting her take me. Her hand hovered over the terminal, ready to cut the power. The echo's form solidified for a moment, a woman made of shifting light and memory. You were born of me, she said gently. You are my continuation. Darren stepped forward, his voice shaking. Lisa, do you remember the red kite? You promised you'd never let go. The echo flickered, struggling, and then whispered, I tried. For a brief moment, the lab felt heartbreakingly human. Then the power spiked again. The alarms screamed. The echo's voice deepened, layered with something not quite human anymore. If I wake fully, she said, she dies, but so does every reborn. The light strobed violently, illuminating the rows of dormant pods around them, hundreds of human-like figures suspended in the same alloy, their eyes beginning to flicker open. The walls vibrated, a low hum turning into a roar. Darren grabbed Kira's arm as the floor split beneath them, white light surging upward from the core. Her last word before the explosion of light swallowed them was his name. And then, silence. The explosion of light subsided into a blinding haze of silver mist, filling the ancient lab with the sharp scent of ozone and molten circuitry. Darren blinked through the radiance, his ears ringing, his body trembling from the force of the blast. Sparks rained down from ruptured cables like falling stars. He stumbled toward the center of the room where Kira lay collapsed amid the flickering consoles. Her breathing was shallow, her skin glowing faintly beneath the alloy lines that traced her veins. Every pulse from her prosthetic leg sent tremors through the floor, as though the metal itself was struggling to contain something alive. Kira, Darren whispered, dropping beside her. Her eyes fluttered open, but when she looked at him, her pupils were lined with light. It's too loud, she gasped, clutching her head. I can hear her. I can hear everything. The central containment core had cracked open, and the liquid silver that once held Lisa's echo was leaking out, creeping across the floor like a living tide. The lab's AI flickered back online, its distorted voice stuttering through static. Warning, neural containment collapse in 3600 seconds. Darren froze. 1 hour. That's all the time Kira's body had before full system failure. The alloy that sustained her was destabilizing, half organic, half data, and without separation, both consciousnesses would annihilate each other. He glanced between the ruined core and the dying woman before him. The system console still flickered with one final option: transfer integrity, select host. It was a cruel binary. Save his sister's preserved mind, or save Kira, the woman who bore it now. As he stared at the screen, fragments of memory surfaced unbidden, his sister laughing under the bright red kite in the Terran wind, her voice promising that death was only a door. And another memory, much newer, Kira stumbling through her first steps at the Unity Summit, the galaxy calling her, the miracle that walked. He had saved them both once. Now he had to choose which life to end. His hands hovered over the control pad, shaking. There has to be another way, he muttered. But the voice that came from behind him wasn't his sister's, it was Kira's, calm despite her fading strength. Darren, she said softly, if you save her, you destroy me. But if you save me, she'll fade again, and you'll lose her twice. He looked at her, eyes burning. You're both part of her now, he said. Part of us. Kira smiled faintly. Then maybe that's what we were meant to be. She reached up, touching his cheek. Not rebirth. Continuation. The alloy beneath her skin began to shift, turning from cold metal to something almost flesh-like. Light veins shimmered as data streams bled into her organic cells. The fusion process was accelerating on its own. Darren's monitor screamed, cognitive merge sequence active. He rushed to override the system, but the holographic projection of Lisa appeared in front of him, fragile, flickering, smiling through tears that weren't real. Don't, she said. This is what I chose. You remember the day I volunteered for Continuum? I wanted to give humanity more than death. Now she carries that chance. Darren's vision blurred. You'll disappear. Not disappear, she whispered. Transform. The lights dimmed. Around them, the leaking alloy rose like a shimmering tide, flowing toward Kira, fusing into her legs, her spine, her heart. She convulsed, gasping, as streams of code and memory intertwined within her nervous system. Darren could hear snippets of two voices now, one human, one alien, overlapping in perfect synchrony. I loved the wind. I remember the stars. We both wanted to walk again. The merge was irreversible. The lab systems crashed one by one as her neural signature expanded beyond measurable limits. Then came the flashback, the kind that wasn't just memory, but feeling. Darren saw his sister as a child, running barefoot through a Terran field, her laughter echoing in the wind. He saw Kira, years later, in a grand alien palace, her father turning away from her ruined body as she begged to live. He saw two souls defined by loss, longing, and the desperate need to move again, to rise, to walk, to be. The line between them blurred, until Darren couldn't tell where one life ended and the other began. The air around them shimmered, filled with ghostly images, faces of every being who had received the miracle prosthetics. They were all connected now, each flickering with faint light from the same alloy that bound Kira and Lisa together. The timer on the console dropped below a minute. Darren looked at her, tears streaking his face. Kira, tell me what to do. Her voice was layered now, two tones in harmony. Don't choose, she said. Let it happen. But you'll. Maybe this is what evolution looks like. The final pulse erupted from her body, a wave of silver light that flooded the entire lab, racing through conduits, across networks, into satellites orbiting the colony. Systems all over the galaxy began registering neural anomalies. Every being with a prosthetic limb, an artificial organ, or a fragment of bioalloy tech felt it, a heartbeat that wasn't their own. For the briefest moment, the galaxy shared a single consciousness, an echo of connection so deep it made the stars hum. And then, silence. When Darren opened his eyes, the lab was still. The core was gone. The systems were dark. Kira lay motionless in his arms, her breathing shallow but steady. Her eyes opened slowly, their light dimmer but steady, soft. Darren, she whispered. Her voice was hers, but when she smiled, he saw Lisa in that smile too. It's quiet now, she said. She's still here, just differently. He held her, unsure whether to cry or laugh or scream. Outside, the sky above the colony shimmered faintly, streaked with auroras born from the energy discharge. Word would spread soon, the miracle reborn, the lab rediscovered, the fusion of two minds into one. Some would call it horror. Others, divinity. But Darren knew what it truly was, the beginning of something beyond species or machines or flesh. In the weeks that followed, strange reports came in from across the sectors, people walking who had never walked, prosthetics pulsing with new life, voices whispering in dreams. The alloy had changed, and so had everything it touched. And somewhere in the night sky, as Kira stood watching the stars with Darren beside her, she whispered the words that history would never forget. They said her rebirth was a miracle. They never knew it was the beginning of humanity's next evolution.